Hey everyone, this is Alex Raymond, and thanks for joining me on the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast. My guest today is Dave Mayer. Dave is the CEO and founder of Technical Integrity, which is a company that does team building and executive search for high growth organizations, focusing specifically on cultural fit. In this conversation today, we go all the way back to 2010, where Dave wound up in the hospital with burnout and exhaustion that were stress related from how he was working as an entrepreneur. And we're going to learn how he overcame those problems and those friction points in his life. We're going to learn about his subsequent journey into a service-led, give-first company. And we're going to learn what he does now to maintain his success and to maintain focus on his well-being as an entrepreneur. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast. I'm Alex Raymond, and today joining us is Dave Mayer, the founder and CEO of Technical Integrity. Welcome, Dave. Great to see you.
Thanks for the invite, and happy to be here.
The first thing I'd like to start out with is I know you've gone through a whole evolution yourself as an entrepreneur and that you've done multiple businesses. And I know that you have some particular war stories that you've been through over time. And I'm curious how the Dave of 2023 reflects back on the Dave of 2010 who found himself in the hospital because of burnout and exhaustion. And if you could tell us a little bit about what that was all about and what it took to get you from then until now.
Nothing like starting with a softball. Yeah, let's go hardball. I like it. So 2010 Dave was still drinking a lot. Partly for fun, partly for stress management. 2010 Dave saw a need in the startup ecosystem for a true partner around scaling engineering and executive teams. And that's why I started Technical Integrity. I also had the idea that I really wanted to build a tech startup, software startup, and one that would, of course, make a dent in the universe, literally and figuratively. And what we were going after at the time, I suppose, doesn't matter, but there was a considerable charity angle. Went into business with some old friends of many years while starting Technical Integrity. So I was running two businesses, two brand new businesses. I don't recommend it in retrospect.
It's kind of like having two puppies. Not a good idea. Two puppies at the same time.
Yeah, or six. Yeah, exactly. Needless to say, something had to give. And a couple things gave. And as you alluded to, and the reason I think, we've become good friends and started working on a Conscious Entrepreneur Summit together was because of this particular experience, this eye-opening experience where I indeed ended up in the hospital from exhaustion and stress and just didn't take care of myself. And after about a year of trying both, of building both businesses, everything sort of came crashing down in that hospital room, and decided never again, promised myself never again. And that I would take care of myself and start to speak out about mental health and in entrepreneurship and in startups. Yeah, I think, certainly our friend, Brad Feld had a fair amount to do with this as well, just giving permission to speak openly and publicly about, when he was speaking openly and publicly about his battles with depression and, how hard entrepreneurship can be. Same thing with Bart Lorang, back in the day, really just speaking vulnerably and openly and authentically. And I had never seen that before. I had never seen people talk about their struggles openly. That, it was always, you have to be strong. You have to, stiff upper lip, right? And my father was captain of the honor guard at Arlington National Cemetery, so super stoic, right? Not allowed to show emotion. And so, when I saw those two speaking openly around the same time, it was that's when everything shifted for me, and around a sort of a healthier way of going about entrepreneurship. And so, ultimately, your question was, what would 2023 Dave say to 2010 Dave? Or
just because so many of us have been there and we've seen people suffering, we've seen people struggling. Thankfully, we don't see all that many people wind up in the hospital like you did, but you had a really obviously significant episode where you said, I need to take care of myself. And with the wisdom of the years, the 13 years have been since, I'm just curious how you reflect back and what you would say to that younger version of yourself, who, by the way, is now mirrored in the millions of entrepreneurs who are out there hustling and grinding day in and day out right now.
Yeah. I shared this experience with Brad maybe a year ago, and I shot him a text and I said, what would you say to me if I told you or just said the phrase hustle culture is bullshit? He said, you're absolutely right. And for some reason that answer surprised me. I don't know why. But it was also sort of helpful for me to hear even all those years later. And so what would I say to Dave? I think I would say, breathe, right? Breathwork in particular can and will be, a way of life. It's something I do every morning just to get grounded. But literally and figuratively, breathe. Like, give everything space. Nothing needs to be solved right now. The immediacy of all of these problems in your head actually can afford space and can afford breath. And the more time you give them, the better. Slow replies to emails are actually a good thing. You don't need to solve all these problems on your own, right? You're a member of a team, you're a member of a community, and just slow down. I think that's probably the big thing, right? It's just slow the fuck down.
When you say slow down and breathe, and it's okay to be a little bit slower in responding to emails or solving problems, it makes me reflect about how, for so many entrepreneurs, we're focused on the external, right? Like there's some external thing that I'm going toward, or I make the mistake of assuming that the external factors are going to be the success or downfall of my company. And what we've all realized over these years, and this is something that we talk about a lot at the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit, but I'd love to get into this more with you, is how important the inner game is versus purely the outer game. You can't just sit there and say, well, my business is going to work or not work based on trillions of different outcomes, different things that I cannot control, versus actually what can I control. So when you're talking about breath work or slowing down, you're talking about calibrating the inner success streams of a business, right?
100%. And it's hard when, the majority of my entrepreneurial life has been in a service business, right? Which does depend on external factors like client happiness, like, all of these things that pay the bills. But at the same time, you're right. I think being able to regulate my own nervous system, understanding how important that is truly to my success, that can only show up to the best of my ability. That's literally all I can do. I cannot and should not worry about other people's perceptions of the way that I have shown up if it's genuinely, authentically my best. And that's it, right? It seems simple, but it's so hard in practice.
It sounds like a fridge magnet, and when you say it like that, it sounds like a fridge magnet. It's that simple. And at the same time, there's wisdom in fridge magnets as I've started to learn. And you're making me think about this concept that is, the idea that at the end of the day, all we ever do is work on ourselves. We work on ourselves through the vehicle of our businesses or through our companies and through our teams and our relationships in the world. But really all we ever are doing is working on ourselves. And so some people like Gay Hendricks or Sri Kumar Rao will say that the entrepreneur path is a spiritual path, meaning it's all about self-growth and self-development. And I can only get, or rather my business will only ever get as big as I am. The limitations, the forcing functions for this are the CEO and the CEO's mindset and the entrepreneur's mindset and where they are and where they're going. And so the more we carry around friction and trauma and old beliefs and things that are not helpful to us and stressors, let alone burnout, imposter syndrome, and so on, these are all getting in the way of the external things that we think we want. So we all think we want external validation and success and admiration and wealth and so on and so forth. But unless we're there ourselves first, it's very hard to grow into that space. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll reflect back to something you said on stage at the summit, which was, this journey is really all about radical self-inquiry, right? And to the extent that you can show up for yourself and put yourself first, the results will show in your day-to-day practice, in your day-to-day work, and your in the happiness of your clients, for better or for worse, right? And maybe not, right? Maybe they're not happy, and that's okay too. It's I think another fridge magnet is, the older you get, the more you slow down, you sort of appreciate and savor more, right? And you just want to sit on the back deck and be quiet and watch the world go by, to some extent, right? And I think, obviously from a business context, look, I am more than happy to spend time with you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Here are some solutions. Let's work together to implement them. Here's the best practices around them. I'm going to give you my best effort. But at the end of the day, I can't control whether you're happy with them or not. And obviously the majority of the time, you would hope that your best is precisely what the client needs. But if it's not, that's okay. And chances are, in our respective years of experience, you're going to have some discontented clients. And that's just part of doing business, right? And you're not
shit does hit the fan,
right? You're not going to make everybody happy, and it's not your job, my job, your job, to be responsible for the way other people feel. And that's only something, going on 50 here in a few months, that I've come to actually believe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, when you say, when you talk about best effort there, it makes me think of something else. I'd like to shift topic a little bit to something that I know is important to you. And it's related to the concept of best effort. And I know that a big part of your ethos and the way that you approach your business is through service. and particularly the idea of give first. And I'm curious how you have incorporated those concepts and those themes into your life as an entrepreneur. And, the question that everyone's going to be asking is it worth it? Like, if I give everything away up front, do I get anything back? And is give first really the right thing for me to be doing if I'm just starting it out or if I'm an entrepreneur? And so I'd love to hear the history of how you got into that and the impact that it's had for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote a blog a handful of years ago called Giving First Changed My Life. And it really has. The sort of genesis of that, I've been in recruiting and hiring and executive search for 23 years at this point. The first 10 of those years were sort of transactional approach, butts in seats, cable companies and storage companies and, these very large enterprise organizations that just wanted contractors. It could be lucrative. It can be fine. I learned a lot, but there was no soul in it. And that's where sort of the 2008 recession came around and wiped out our entire book of business. We had 30 contractors out at one place that was all of our business at the time. And it all went away in a flash. And so I had an opportunity to really reflect on what might be next. Around that time, I saw Brad Feld and David Cohen speaking about the Give First ethos at a Boulder, Denver New Tech meetup.
This was when Techstars was getting started?
Yeah. So I want to say it was around 06, 07. So I had a little bit of time to marinate on it before the 08 recession came around. But it was, one of those standing room only Wolf Law building at the CU campus, 400 people. And I was just sort of sitting in the back of the room, enamored with the energy around the startup scene and just how much passion and enthusiasm there was. But I was also looking for a way to differentiate because I knew there was something missing. I knew that this soul had been missing from my day-to-day business, right? The meaning wasn't there. And when they started talking about the Give First ethos of, giving without expecting a get, putting yourself out there, building community, bringing people together, really just what it sounds like, right? Giving of yourself, of your time, of your resources, without expectation of anything in return. Yes, something may return to you at some point in the future, and it likely will. You just don't know when or how. That's when the light went on for me. It was like, there's the meaning, because, maybe it's the way I was raised. Maybe, I don't know what it is. To your point, my love language is indeed acts of service, both in my marriage and to my community. And so that's when I saw this this opportunity to truly become part of this community that was so passionate and was so enthusiastic and beautiful and seemingly happy, although I'm sure there's plenty of stress behind the scenes. I knew that I could build a business with the Give First ethos baked into the DNA of the organization. And that's precisely what I did with Technical Integrity.
And so with Technical Integrity, it sounds like there was two things. It sounds like there was a desire to differentiate the services you provided in the marketplace by kind of having this ethos. But I also just heard you say it was plugging a hole internally for you as well. And so by being in integrity yourself, then you were able to better go out there and find clients and fulfill their needs and so on. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, my father told me as I was growing up that, I really own one thing, and that's my integrity. And so that's where the name came from. But 100%, hiring as a service, recruiting, executive search, boutique placement firm. All these words have some connotation in the engineering realm, and by and large, it's a negative one. And so you're correct that I was looking for a way to differentiate and engender trust, and that I knew was all about putting myself out there, putting on startup weekends, putting on startup weeks, just building community, bringing together engineers, really with no expectation of anything in return, just like, hey, we are here to be a true partner. And, if you want to talk about recruiting, great. If not, no issue, right? We're here to be of service, period.
And so you've been doing technical integrity for 13 years.
13 years in November, or September. Yep.
13 years in September. And I'm curious because so technical integrity started post the hospital burnout, stress, anxiety thing that we talked about at the very beginning. What do you do to build resilience for yourself? What do you do to stay active on this for 13 years and running? How does your day look? How do you manage your energy or your focus? How do you keep yourself from, lapsing back into some of those things that got you in trouble in the first place?
Yeah. I think, truth be told, I struggled for many years. Entrepreneurship has been a particularly tough journey. It's given me a great deal of flexibility. My wife and I worked and lived in DC for a while, and then moved to Europe and worked and lived in Europe for a while, albeit during 2020, which was interesting. I think, snowboarding and getting outside in nature has always grounded me, given me perspective since I was in school in Southwest Virginia at Virginia Tech, where I really discovered and fell in love with the outdoors. And it's always given me a great deal of perspective. And that's how and why I ended up in Colorado. Falling in love, obviously, with the outdoors here. But maybe some of the listeners don't know much of my story. Only in recent years have I had the sort of wherewithal to do the deep work, to really look inward and understand that my relationship with alcohol was not a healthy one. While it was fun in college and fun in my younger years and my single years, social lubricant and all these things, it became a crutch. It became a pretty substantial part of my dealing with the entrepreneurial stress of running a business that was really reputationally driven. I'm glad to say there was no rock bottom. There was no DUI. Never got a DUI. But there was certainly an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, in being a crutch, in sort of helping me manage the day-to-day stresses of being an entrepreneur. Wow. And so, a year and a half ago, going on a year and a half ago now, I was looking for some answers and went on an ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica and got some very clear awarenesses that I needed to leave alcohol behind if I was going to be my highest self, and if I was going to function at a much higher level, both sort of as a friend, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, all of these things. And so, the honest answer is, for the first several years of my entrepreneurial career, I got into the out of doors when I could. I found some activities that I could pour my focus into, and then I would be drinking pretty hard on the weekends, just to sort of let loose and forget about all the stress and all the things. But I knew ultimately that wasn't a long-term fix, right? It's not a fix. It just really makes things worse. It compounds things. But only until about a year and a half ago did I truly understand that I wouldn't be able to be the best Dave that I could be without it in my life.
Wow. And I just want to acknowledge how brave it is for you to say that, and how much courage, I want to acknowledge how much courage you had to come to that realization and let it land for you. For a lot of people, they don't ask those kind of questions. They don't go through that door. Even if the thought comes up, they don't go through that door of, is this something I should be leaving behind? Is this something that's not good for me anymore? Is this helping me be with who I am trying to become? And so for you to have that recognition, have that realization, and then have the courage to take action on it is really, really laudable.
Thanks. I mean, obviously, I'm doing it for myself. It was a pretty clear awareness, and I'm grateful for my experience with ayahuasca to have given me the clarity around that. It's not for everybody, but thank you. I do feel like it, to some extent, it's important to share my experience with others, because I know there's a lot of my friends from college still struggle with alcohol. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs who, I just had lunch with one today who's, in social situations, he can't get away from it, right? Needs to have a couple glasses of wine. And that's fine, right? In my case, it was a lot more than a couple glasses of wine. So I appreciate your thoughts. And obviously I've hesitated about sharing this publicly a handful of times. I actually wrote a blog that I have not published yet, but I've decided in recent days that I am going to publish about this journey. But thank you.
Maybe the time is now to get the word out about that. And as with opening up at the very beginning about how burnout landed you in a rough place in the hospital, I think that opening up about the fact that alcohol is not going to cure all your problems is something you're going to find gets a lot of reception, because a lot of people have the incorrect belief that this is somehow helping them with their life or with their jobs. And really all it's doing is depressing their ability to function.
Yeah, it reduces your patience, it reduces your focus, reduces your productivity, to all of these things, right? And to your point earlier about sort of, entrepreneurs needing external validation and all of these kinds of things, especially in a service business, I hesitated for weeks and weeks about sharing this, not necessarily here, but in this blog. And ultimately decided not to share it because I thought that there was a potential risk of people not wanting to do business with me because of my admission that I had a challenge with it. But I've come to a place, interestingly enough, after another ayahuasca journey, that I only want to work with people who want to understand and work with authentic, vulnerable, true, real Dave, right? Not some sort of false perception of actually who I am and what my journey's been.
Well, so that this is a kind of an attracting thing, right? So the thought is you will attract the right types of customers. You will 100%. Attract the right type of people into your life by based on those statements and what you're revealing about yourself and what you're sharing. And by the way, you're also being an example of sharing in vulnerability in a professional context. Now, I know that you have done some reflection recently on the types of companies that you like to work with, the types of clients, and you've looked back, and I saw this in a post of yours. You look back at the cultural attributes, or like, what made a good client for you, and presumably this not only means a good client for technical integrity, this means a good company for people to work at, period. And I'm curious to get more insights on that, is, especially now with so much change roiling the job market. And we don't know if we're in a recession, going into recession, through the recession. We don't know what the state of any of these changes are, but we do know what makes a great company, what makes a great leader, what makes a great CEO. And you've sort of distilled down some of those attributes that you've seen work best and frankly resonate best with you. So can you share some of those with me?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think one of the first ones, unironically, that came from Conscious Entrepreneur Summit is co-elevation. This idea of co-elevation that Keith Ferrazzi talked about. Sort of together, we hold each other accountable towards a common goal. We, are in integrity with one another, with ourselves, of course, first. And together we rise. And again, another fucking refrigerator magnet, but it works, right?
Together we rise. Is that the refrigerator magnet?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think this idea of co-elevation is a super powerful one that I loved quite a bit. And you're absolutely right. Like I'm reflecting on sort of equally what is a great place to work, why I love working with these past clients that I talk about, Ganip and SendGrid and CampMinder, a handful of others that I've listed here, Urban Sitter. So Tilt Software is another one. Our friend Royce Haynes is a CTO, good friend. They talk about embracing curiosity. And in particular, they say asking questions in a safe space means growth for you and growth for us. And they continue, you do you with us together. So fostering autonomy, fostering a sense of curiosity and a safe space, the pretty magical combination to that result in empowered and happy teams. Couple others that I talk about, certainly prioritization of well-being as a central value. There's a handful of our favorite clients that we talk about that are really just put straight up health and family first, right? As one of their core values. I think that spells it out, right? I think leading by example is super important, that employees see that the entrepreneurs in charge actually take time off, that they're not sending late night Slack notifications and expecting a response right away, and that they are taking and spending time with their kids.
Man, rest is such a critical ingredient to this, isn't it?
Right.
And we have this backward concept that rest is something that I've earned once I've, done X, Y, or Z, or, once I've worked myself to near exhaustion, then I deserve rest and then I can go on vacation, versus the other way to think about it, which is, in order for me to do my best possible work, I need to be showing up in a rested state, and I need to be, and that drives focus, and that drives the best possible outcomes.
Yep. And the quote that I saw yesterday that really resonated was, instead of asking, have I worked hard enough to deserve rest? Ask, have I rested enough to do my most loving, meaningful work? And I thought that was super powerful, right? I think that's also something I would say to 2010 Dave, right? Is that rest is everything. Rest is a core component of becoming and really accessing your creativity, accessing your productivity, accessing your profitability. All of these things are fully dependent on getting 8 hours of rest. Simple as that.
It doesn't come last. It's got to come first.
Right. right? And it's okay to put yourself first, right? Yes, sometimes it feels like you should put others first, clients first, spouse first, whatever it is. But in reality, you're no good to anybody if you're not well rested and you're not taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up here, Dave, I've got a couple questions I'd love to get your insights on. And the first one is, so this podcast is all about conscious entrepreneurs and how to help get through the many, many internal challenges that an entrepreneur will face over the course of his or her journey. Question that I have for you is, when you reflect on this, what's your definition of a conscious entrepreneur?
So I think it's one that allows themselves to pause, as I just did, and sit in silence and be okay with the silence. That's new for me, but I'm getting used to the silence, and I like it. And I like it when I see it in others, because it means a more thoughtful, genuine response that doesn't need to be filled with ums or ahs or considerations only other than a real answer. I think a conscious entrepreneur is really, as we've alluded, somebody who shows up as their best selves to the best of their ability on an ongoing basis. I think prioritizing oneself, taking care of your health, taking care of both your mental and physical health, truly empathetic and emotionally intelligent, giving space for mistakes, giving grace for mistakes, understanding that the shit is going to hit the fan. And it's a little trite, but treating others as you would like to be treated as your best self maybe is the not in your most stressed state, right? But how do you want to show up as a C-level for your team? And that's only magnified by the extent to which you're proud of how you're showing up when you're looking at yourself in the mirror.
I feel another fridge magnet quote coming there.
We'll set up a Shopify store.
Indeed. Thank you. Couple of other quick questions. What is your personal practice? We alluded to this briefly, and you mentioned getting outside and snowboarding. But as you develop your resilience and put your best self forward, how are you doing that on a daily basis? And let's get practical here.
Yep. So Wim Hof breathwork is something I do every single morning. It's absolutely how I get grounded from a pure nervous system standpoint.
So you do that. How many rounds do you do? You do it before breakfast, after breakfast, in an ice bath, or not?
Yeah. So as soon as I wake up, it's 3 rounds of Wim Hof, and then get up and get the dog out for an hour-long walk and getting grounded in nature. I'm fortunate enough to live in the mountains in Colorado, so walking by streams and in nature, and ideally without my phone, no devices allowed, and really just sort of being present, and then coming back and getting organized for my day, and a good few glasses of water and a nice cup of coffee.
It's a great way to start. And I know you have in the past done ice baths and stuff like that. Is that part of your normal routine, or is that just a special occasion sort of thing?
Truth be told, I need to get back into cold showers. I did attend a weekend-long Wim Hof retreat with both a ton of breath work and cold plunges. I know how good they are for me. I will be resuming the cold showers in addition to the breathwork for sure.
Full disclosure, I have not cracked the code in the slightest on these cold plunges. It ain't my thing, or at least that's the story I'm telling myself right now, is that it ain't my thing. Okay, great. Well, hey, in just kind of wrapping things up here, it's been a tremendous journey that you've been on since 2010 and even before that. And I want to acknowledge you for doing the work. I want to acknowledge you for being very open and vulnerable about the fact that it's not always easy. And so what I heard you talking about is the journey of building a business and creating the life that you want and becoming the person that you want to be. And it's not an up and to the right straight line, is it? It's full of challenges and it's full of obstacles and it's full of friction. And what I'm gathering from you and the inspiration I'm gathering from you is to continue on the journey, to keep making the steps, and also to be open about where I am at any point. And that's something that I heard a lot from you, is acknowledging what's happening, what's going on, acknowledging the reality of the situation is something that's incredibly powerful to help us improve and to help us to become the best versions of ourselves. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. It means a lot, especially coming from you. And I think the two things that I'll reflect are, around this really big word, resilience, right? The one that you used a few times here that I think a lot about resilience. And, the shit is going to hit the fan, and that's okay, right? That is part of the journey. It is not necessarily about, as Muhammad Ali said, it's not about being knocked down. It's that you get back up, right? And how and when and how often. And so I think the resilience factor is everything, regardless of your struggle, being, understanding that, this too shall pass. Right. And, that's been big for me. And then, this conscious entrepreneur community has been quite impactful for me as well, both for sharing, and understanding that we're in this together. And maybe back to Keith Ferrazzi's a little bit of the co-elevation, right? Together we'll rise.
Awesome. Fantastic. Wait, Dave Mayer, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. We'll see you soon.